Good and Erev Shabbos from an undisclosed location where our family is spending time together. It is Parshas Vayechi. We're going to do Shabbos Chazak. We're going to conclude the book of Bereshis. And there's an interesting thing that happens when Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, asks his son Yosef Atzadik, Joseph, to take an oath. He administers an oath that that when Yaakov passes away, that Joseph would take his body to the land of Israel and bury him in Israel. But why the oath? Would Joseph's commitment not be enough? If Joseph said, I will bury you, Dad, in the land of Israel, is that not enough? You have to take an oath. And if you say it's because he was worried that maybe he wouldn't fulfill it, and by taking the oath, he'd be obligated not to be seduced by the Egyptians or others not to take him to Israel, Joseph would betray Jacob and not take him to Israel because of external factors? The Rebbe says something incredibly powerful. He says that Joseph was not worried about external factors challenging his choice of taking his father and fulfilling his wishes and bringing him to Israel. He was worried about himself. Joseph himself, when he passes away, decides to be buried in Egypt and not to leave Egypt until the Jews leave Egypt after the exile, because he understood that being at the side of the Jews while they're in exile, even his resting place being at their side, is a phenomenal, powerful thing for the Jews. It's a comfort, it's a solace, it's a bracha to have a kever of such a tzaddik nearby. So he was worried that maybe he would be seduced to allow his father, to break his father's request for the benefit of Klal Yisrael and have his father buried in Egypt for the same reason, even though his father specifically asked to be buried in Israel. And so he made an oath so that Joseph shouldn't convince himself otherwise and change his plans by deciding what's better for the Jewish people on account of his father's request. Then why did Jacob indeed himself not want to be buried in Egypt? We get why Joseph wanted to fulfill his father's pledge and took an oath, but why did Jacob not want to be buried in Israel? Be buried in Egypt. Says the Rebbe, because Jacob understood that when Jews are in exile, there's a halachic term, ein chavush materis atzmai, an imprisoned person can't free themselves. If Yaakov was buried in Egypt, he wouldn't be able to be a spiritual benefit to the Jewish people the way he is when he's buried in Israel. But being buried in Israel, in the Holy Land, and sending his bracha and his blessings, and sending his inspiration from Israel to the Jews in Egypt would be a better benefit for them. So each tzaddik did what they needed to do. Joseph needed to be buried side by side with his people in the land that he took care of them physically when he was alive and continued to take care of them after his death. And Jacob, whose primary household, his primary home was Eretz Yisrael, would send his bracha from there to them and give them whatever they need from a distance. An incredible reminder of the sensitivity of what it means to be a Roi Yisrael, to be a Jewish shepherd, a shepherd of the Jewish people, to ensure that the people are actually the focus and not our own agendas, whether they're spiritual or physical or material. But the agenda is not what drives us, it's what the people need. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll see you in Shmois.